Hey, third graders, welcome back to our fictional narratives unit. Today is so exciting because in this lesson, we will spend most of the time drafting our stories to complete our first draft. So today's lesson is going to be actually a little bit shorter because we wanted to give you even more time to write today. Before we begin, we have some writing shout outs that we'd like to share. And this one's coming from Caroline in my class. And Caroline, if I go to her planning document, has filled out a lot of this section where she did a lot of elaboration, even when talking about her problem. So it was actually really easy for her to get started. She started in that first portion of her story, Mountain, and this is the first paragraph where we're getting introduced to the character and the setting and a little bit of the problem. So Caroline's going to be continuing today to try to develop more. And as she goes back to her story mountain, for each part of that story mountain, she'll press enter twice and begin typing. So I'm really excited to see that from her today. Going back, let's go to another writing share out. This student did something pretty cool that you have the option to do as well. This student, for every paragraph, also labeled it as a different chapter of a book. So that's also an option for you. So I'm going to go to, let's see where that one was. Here it is. This is from Leah. So Leah has also done a great job at planning out her story. So it makes it that much easier to get started. So for each section, she actually labeled it with a chapter with a title, which is something you can try too, which is very common in a lot of books we read. So again, Leah's might be a little bit longer. There might be more paragraphs in her story, which is really fine. Today, she's also going to be focused on trying to get as much of it completed as possible. Ideally, we'd like to see that you have a completed draft today, going all the way back. Let's look at our story mountain, all the way to your Hollywood ending. Okay, so you're going to go up the story mountain through your problem all the way to the climax where the problem is the worst, and then into your solution and then the ending. It would be great if we can see that from each student so that we can give you feedback on that, because all of the other lessons that we'll do after this are going to be building on your first draft. So today, I want to teach you that when writers draft, they use their planning document to help stay organized. So the planning document is what we've been using this entire time for our brainstorming. They also write down as much as they can to get their ideas down. So they write as much as they can to get their ideas down. Read that again. And that's really important. There's a few steps you can try today in order to get as much written as possible. So, some of the steps to completing your first draft. After each paragraph or scene in your story, and scenes kind of like if you think about watching a movie or a TV show, there's different scenes where it takes place somewhere else. So, those might be different scenes in your story. It might be the next day, it might be later that evening, but that's a different scene. So, you're going to want to press the enter key twice to write a new paragraph, and you're going to be looking at your story mountain to write what comes next. Today, I don't want you to worry too much about spelling or making it sound just right. Use this time to get all your ideas down. You're going to have plenty of time to later revise and edit your story. So don't worry about that right now. We're just looking to see that you have all parts of your story mountain on your draft today. And one other tip is to try to write without stopping too often. This way, you can get into a good flow of writing, which makes it really fun and also helps you get your ideas going. If you stop to think about how a word's spelled too often, you're going to lose your concentration and lose that flow that we'd like to see from writers. So I'm not going to show you the whole story that Miss W and I ended up writing, but you are going to notice that we did write several paragraphs. And the reason is, and I'm going to go to our copy. The reason is each of these parts in our story mountain is its own paragraph. And I actually added in another paragraph kind of right around here because I looked back at where our problem got worse and I actually noticed that there was much more to add. So mine looks a little longer than maybe yours will, but you should be aiming to have about 5 paragraphs. Now we have 6, and you actually might have more. Your story might go on, and that's okay. This is a time to be creative, so don't limit yourself by the number of paragraphs, but you should be aiming for about 5 today, okay? So I'm going to scroll down, and I'm just going to briefly show you what Miss W and I wrote for ours. Yesterday, you saw that Miss W got to this part right here. Miss W wrote the beginning, and then we worked together to fill in the rest of this part. So every time I wrote a new paragraph, all I did was just scroll up to my story mountain and think, okay, what comes next? Oh yeah, the problem gets worse. I'm going to write a paragraph about this part right here. Sometimes I also looked at this part where we wrote about how the problem gets worse, and I thought, oh yeah, I actually didn't talk about this part in my story mountain, so I'm going to add it in. I actually really liked how this sounded. So what I did was I actually copied and pasted some of this that I used. I did that by just kind of right clicking here and I said copy and then I pasted it down later. Okay. You can also rewrite it so that you can practice your typing. So basically, I added in parts of this is where the problem began, where Miss W wrote this first section. This is where it gets worse and worse. And here's the climax. After the climax, I looked back and I thought, okay, what happened after the climax? Oh, yeah, the solution. So I wanted to go down and see where the solution was, and that's going to be my next paragraph. So this is how they were able to solve, Aldo was able to solve the problem. And we're going to read this later, so don't worry. I know you're on the edge of your seat wanting to know how he solved the problem. This last paragraph right here was called my Hollywood ending. And the Hollywood ending is maybe just kind of, and I think that Miss W went over this, but when you think about your Hollywood ending, it's kind of bringing about like a sense of calm and happiness, right? So we want our stories to usually end pretty well. So we're going to be thinking about how did our character feel at the very end and kind of like what was happening, maybe describing the scene a little bit more. We are going to go over this later, so don't worry about it too much now. But I noticed that I went all the way to my ending. I went all the way to the Hollywood ending without stopping. Now, this is not a perfect draft. There's a lot I'd probably change, but that's okay. What's going to make it easier going forward is like this is probably the hardest day for me, for us, Miss W and me. We had to draft our whole story, and that takes a while. So that's why we're giving you a little extra time to do that today. And it might be that you write a couple paragraphs and go take a lunch break. You might be that you write this and then come back to this part later in the day because your brain might be fresh, you might be ready to go. Okay. But once you do start a paragraph, try to finish it, like I said, because it's going to be that much easier. Okay. We are really looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. Again, just remember that this is a draft. It does not have to be perfect. We are going to be developing this piece. So just really try your best today. Okay. Best of luck.